Hello, hello. Our topic today is one that people ask me about all the time. It's a biggie and it's a layered topic, and it can be confusing or even difficult to navigate sometimes. So, picture this scenario. You're doing great work with a client or with someone in a group that you're leading. And in the work, of course, you show up as your wonderful self with your wonderful personality. And then at some point in your work with this client in the group, maybe at the end of a session or maybe in an email, a client says something like this: I love our sessions so much. And also, I feel like we have so much in common. Do you want to grab coffee sometimes? A lot of coaches and practitioners aren't sure what to do when this happens. In other words, what do you do when a client wants to hang out as friends? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? Would it be weird? How do you not make that moment weird in your response, right? And is it even quote unquote allowed or ethical for a coach to be friends or grab coffee with a client? That's all what we're going to be discussing today so that you can be empowered and do the right thing, whatever that means, when this situation comes up. And this is an important topic, not just about friendship, but about your coaching containers with your clients. How do you keep those coaching containers clean and trustworthy and empowering and effective when a client wants to hang out or become friends? And I'll tell you, there is so much to this topic. I could have spent another hour on it easily, but for this episode, I tried to keep it to the most important pieces to start with. Now, I'll also say, and this is important, in this episode, I'm not going to explore with you what to do if an already established friend wants to work with you, or if you sense that your work can really help someone who is already a friend. That's a related topic. It's a very juicy one. And it's one where you need to be very clear on boundaries and agreements. And for sure, one day I'll do a podcast episode on that, on established friends wanting to become clients. But it's not the same thing as what we're going to be talking about today, which is when someone who is not a friend but a client wants to hang out or become friends. So let's look at this first. Why is it somewhat common for coaching clients to want to hang out with their coaches or to want to become friends? Because it does come up, right? It is somewhat common. Well, for a couple of reasons, I'm going to list some of them right now. I'm going to share some of them with you. Number one, because most coaches are amazing human beings. They have great personalities. They are supportive, right? It's like we naturally are just great. So of course, sometimes clients want to hang out or be friends. Here's another reason why it can be common for coaching clients to want to hang out or be friends. Because unlike some other helping professions, it's sometimes very appropriate for coaches to share about themselves and their own lives in sessions, in classes. Now, of course, as an aside, just to say, we never want to overshare, right? And we only ever want to share about ourselves, share a story, share something personal if it relates 100% to what our client is talking about and can help create deeper awareness. This is a big topic. I go deep into it in Sacred Depths, in that training, how and when to use personal story in coaching sessions. But my point for us today is, because as coaches, we get to be personal in our coaching sessions. We are sharing of ourselves in our classes, in our coaching sessions. It is another reason for clients to want to become friends. Related to that, oftentimes coaches tend to share themselves in their marketing materials and in their social media, right? I'm often sharing stories from my life, etc., incidents in all my public facing material and content. And so people uh, get to know me in a certain way because of those shares. And naturally, people are going to feel a connection, right? And possibly want to have a friendly connection there. Here's another reason why it can be common for coaching clients to want to become friends or hang out. Because for some coach offerings, the connection and the support of the client go beyond session time. So what I mean by this is, in some other helping professions, traditionally, the connection with the client is only during session time. So for an example, we can think about massage therapists, right? For the most part, the connection between a massage therapist and their client and the work that they do together is pretty much during the massage, right? During the massage session time. A lot of coach offerings are a little bit different than that. A lot of coach offerings are on retainer. And what that could mean, for example, and this is how I work with my private clients, is we are connecting during our agreed upon coaching session time. But I also make myself available with boundaries, of course, but I make myself available in between our sessions. We're emailing during coaching sessions. We are using Voxer during coaching sessions, which is a software where you can leave voice messages, right? So I'll use myself as an example, and not all coaches show up for their private clients or their group clients the way I show up. But for me, I really am high touch. I bring a very high level of care and support to my clients. I connect with them, as I said, in between sessions. And not only that, I bring a certain level isn't even the right word, but quality of love to my clients. I really deeply care for my clients and my students, and they feel it. And I've always been this way. When I first learned coaching skills, I remember reading a quote that is just one of my favorites about coaching, and I'll share it with you now. Coaching is love in action in a professional setting. Coaching is love in action in a professional setting. Anyway, all of this is to say back to this topic of my client wants to become friends with me because we're connecting sometimes beyond session time, because we're bringing a level of love and care and support and really showing up. Again, our clients get to know us in deeper ways, right? But then also sometimes that can also lead to like, oh, I want to hang out more. So I can't speak for other professions, only for coaching, but all of this leads to the following question, is it ethical to become friends with clients? If you are a coach, it is not technically unethical or against the rules to hang out with a client or become friends with them. And I'll share that for myself. In my over 20 years of coaching, I have quite a number of times met up with a client for coffee or had them in my home. I've gone to special events that my clients have hosted, like book launches. My clients, because I'm a wedding officiant, my clients have asked me to officiate their weddings and their baby blessing ceremonies and more. I wouldn't exactly call these friendships, but they certainly go beyond the definition of coach and the coaching relationship. And also, over all these years, over 20 years, I've probably walked away with maybe 3 or so clients who I can say have become true friends of mine. But all that being said, I also don't hang out with every client who wants to hang out with me. I really take each situation on its own and make decisions about hanging out or friendship accordingly. Because number one, as a coach, I have a responsibility to do what is right for my client and the coaching container first, right? And sometimes it's not right. It just, for a particular client, it does not make sense. The second reason is because my time and energy are valuable, and I'm only going to hang out or become friends in situations where I feel that my time and energy are being well spent that way. So let me share some reasons or situations where, in my opinion, it's not aligned to hang out with a client or to become friends with a client. Number one, sometimes, every now and again, this has happened to me just a few times in over 20 years, but it can happen. You'll come to the end of a coaching cycle or a coaching program with a client, and they've loved the work that you've done together and have received a lot, but also for whatever reason, they have decided not to continue or not to continue at that point with the coaching. And every now and again, that client, when they come to the end, that's when they're going to ask to hang out or can we grab coffee or whatever it is. And to me, this is not an aligned situation most of the time because it's kind of a way of your client hanging on to the coaching relationship without it, them formally paying or having formal sessions, right? It's not really a friendship situation. It's a way of clinging on after they've decided to not continue. So that's one scenario where, in my opinion, it's not aligned. Here's another scenario where, in my opinion, it's not aligned to hang out. Um, if you sense that the reason why your client is asking is because they want more coaching for free, or they want to pick your brain, right? And they don't want to do it during their paid coaching sessions or time or, within that retainer, then that's not an aligned situation to hang out. Here's another scenario. If you sense that the reason why your client wants to become friends or is asking to grab coffee is because they're lonely or feeling needy, that's not, in my opinion, an aligned reason to hang out, right? And if a client is lonely or needy and the expression of that is they already feel a connection with you and so they want to kind of hang out more, become friends, it might be that it's a coaching situation there for you to help really create awareness on what's going on for your client, right? So that they can see that actually they have a desire to connect more in friendship. And then you can help them strategize on how to do that in their life. All right, a couple more scenarios where, again, in my opinion, it's not really aligned to hang out or become friends with a client. Um, if you don't have the time or space or energy, even if you adore the person, right? So just like I don't always say yes to my established friends when they want to hang out with me, if it's not the right time, if I don't have the time or space or energy to grab the coffee, to hang out, etc. Same with clients, even if I would love to, right? I need to honor first my time, space, energy, not feel guilty saying no. And then finally, well, two more scenarios. So the next one is a little bit, I'm going to be a little bit careful as I say this one. And check this out for yourself. Nothing I ever say is truth with a capital T, but I'm tossing it to you for you to think about. I don't recommend grabbing coffee with a client or considering becoming friends with a client if you yourself during that time period are feeling lonely or feeling a deep need for more friends. And I'll just briefly explain why. The reason why I say this is because, our coaching containers, again, we want to keep those safe and sacred for our clients. And this consideration of friendship, if we are feeling lonely or like a deep need for more connection or friends, sometimes we can't see clearly ourselves if this is someone who it would make sense for us to hang out with, right? Because the loneliness might be leading the show for us. I'll share for myself that I spend a lot of time with my clients and students. And what I mean by that is a lot of my work days are spent connecting with these incredible humans that I get to call my clients and my students. Um, and we have to be really careful that the time we spend in coaching sessions is not mistaken for friendship time if we're lonely. All right, last scenario where or situation where I feel like it's just not aligned to hang out if someone asks. And that's simply if you don't want to, right? Period. No other explanation. In any of the cases that I just mentioned, for me personally, it's a no to hanging out because I know that it won't be aligned for me and it won't be aligned for my client. It's not clean and it doesn't support the client coach relationship and the container, right? It's not just not the right, the scenarios that I mentioned are not the right reasons to hang out or become friends. So I'll share that you can't mitigate those scenarios completely, right? There are going to be times when a client asks to hang out and it's not aligned. It will every now and again happen. But that being said, you can mitigate them quite a bit by how you set up your coaching container and the energetics and boundaries and protocols that you uphold in the container, right? And so, what I mean by this is that I find that there are very, very, very few situations I can count maybe in all my decades, just on one hand, where a client has asked to hang out and it hasn't been appropriate. And that is because of the ways that I set up my coaching containers. That is because of the protocols that I have in place. Because of that, the boundaries are pretty clear. Now, this idea of containers and agreements and protocols, energetics, this is a whole coaching skill and lesson in and of itself. And it's one of the reasons that in the Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner certification, we really take the time to learn how to set the container step by step by step so that we can create tight and empowering client containers with really healthy and empowering boundaries. Okay, so all this being said, when is it aligned to hang out with a client? Well, quite simply, when you really like the person and you feel the same way that you want to hang out and you sense it would be mutually beneficial and also that it would not negatively impact the coaching container. So, in a case where a client asks to hang out socially and it doesn't feel aligned, what do? Because it can be tender, right? And for some people, it takes a lot to make the ask to get coffee or to hang out. In some ways, it can feel scarier or more vulnerable to ask your coach if they'd like to grab coffee than asking someone out on a date or even approaching a prospect. And that's because humans have things around social situations, right? I will admit, I will tell you that even at almost age 50, I still sometimes get nervous socially with a person that I've just met that I really want to become friends with, right? I'm wondering, will they like me back? If I ask them to hang out, will they want to? Right? So it can be tender when a client asks. And you really want to be intentional with your words and with your energy if it's a no for you, right? And of course, each scenario and each client and how they need to receive the no response from you is going to be different. As we always say in Sacred Depths, always coach the what based on the who. Just like when you're coaching a client, you want to use all of your listening skills and nuanced creating awareness skills, your questioning skills, right? You're doing all of that with in your client containers. Well, the same things go for when you're responding to a client who would like to hang out. So, as with everything else in your client work, you want your skills in tip-top shape and then use them to cater to each specific scenario. And yes, it can sometimes be tricky to say no to a client who wants to hang out. And I do sometimes help my Sacred Depth students in specific situations figure out the exact words to respond to a particular client, right, who's made the request. So again, each scenario is different, but for now, I'll give you some general tips that I think will be really helpful for when it's a no, right, to hanging out. So, number one, check your energetics. Energetics, the energy that you are bringing, right, with any coaching situation is so important. Love, 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 love your client, right? Instead of being put off or annoyed or whatever it is that they asked, love them, have compassion for them in it, see them as whole and complete. See that there is an equal playing field, which is really important, right? Because sometimes it can feel like the coach is on a higher ground than the client. But in Sacred Depths, we learn how to make that an equal playing field, right? So that there isn't a strange power play going on. Remember all about the mutual respect in the container, right? All of these are energetics pieces, as well as no guilt, right? Not feeling guilty that you don't want to hang out, and also no fear, right? Or hold the fear inside of yourself tenderly. And when I say fear, what I mean is fear that if you don't want to hang out, it's going to insult the client or they're not going to want to be your client anymore, etc. Right? We can't let fear in any coaching situation lead the show. So number one, check your energetics and really align them. Number two, honor your boundaries, right? Be clear if it's I just don't have the time and space right now, right? That's a boundary. So honor your boundaries. If it's, I sense that this person wants to hang out so they can get coaching for free, they finish their cycle, right? You're not going to say those words, But internally, right? I'm saying take a moment as you check your energetics to then honor your boundaries. And then from there, once you've aligned your energetics, once you've aligned your boundaries, create awareness with your client. So, again, this is going to be different in every scenario, but I'll give you an example. In the case of you're coming to the end of the coaching cycle, the client isn't going to be continuing, but they want to hang out and grab coffee. Depending on the client, this is part of what I might say. Thank you so much for asking. And, this often happens when coaching work comes to a close. It's so normal to want to continue the relationship and maybe also a little bit to not want to let go. And of course, I want for us to keep in touch. You're so important to me. And I want to hear from you and how you're doing. Please know that my door is always open to get an email from you, hear how you're doing. And it's always open for when you're ready to work together again. Right? And then in some cases, it might be required to do some deeper coaching, right? So if the reason that the client asks to hang out is because they're lonely or needy, it is your job as their practitioner, especially if it relates to goals that they're looking to achieve, to help create deeper awareness around what their needs really are and how they can get those needs met, right? So you want your coaching skills, your befriend your fears to be in tip-top shape for this. So when it comes to a client wanting to be your friend, there are times that it's a no. And there are also times that it's a yes, as we looked at, right? Yes to meeting up if they're going to be passing through your hometown. Yes to grabbing coffee if they're local, and you want to give the time and the energy and you would enjoy it, or to having a virtual tea, right? If it feels right for you and you want to, it could be a yes to going to their birthday party or to becoming friends. For some of the yes times, it's just a simple yes, right? You go, you grab the coffee in real life, you have the virtual tea, and nothing really needs to be addressed. It's wonderful. In other times where if it's a yes, so in other words, if the hanging out with the client starts to turn into a true friendship, if you are continuing to also coach this person, there may need to be a conversation about boundaries and containers and what happens in the coaching container versus what happens in the friendship container, and how to wear the different hats in the different contexts, right? So that there are shared agreements, because you may show up differently in the friendship container than you do in the coaching container. You may have different needs in the friendship container as the friend than you do in the practitioner container, right? And so you want to keep all of the different containers clean, tight, empowering, in integrity, and productive. All right. So, as a quick review, we looked today at what to do when a client wants to hang out with you. We looked at some scenarios or situations where it might not be aligned to do so, and then how to handle that. We looked at situations where it would be aligned to do so and how to handle that. I hope that this was valuable. I hoped that you really loved this episode. If you did, please go and give it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to. Give it a review. Share it with a friend. Speaking of friends, please, if you have any friends or colleagues that you know would really appreciate this episode, please share it with them. That's my best way of getting the word out. And also, in case you didn't know, the next cohort of the Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner training is officially open for registration. We start October 2024. And if you have been eyeing Sacred Depths, which is, one of the premier trainings in the industry, it is the training for practitioners who want to go deep, to have all the skills that you need to be extraordinary and to help your clients through any obstacle or fear that shows up. So if you've been eyeing it, please take a moment, check out the registration page, read through it. It's a little long because I love words. And if you're interested, get in touch with us. We'd love to have a conversation with you. For now, I'm wishing you a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode.